Ever wonder why both Singaporeans and Japanese talk about retirement as if it's a funeral plan? Because in both countries, your pension isn't freedom, it's a leash, a very elegant government-issued leash. But here's the twist. One system forces you to save, while the other pretends to save for you. And in the end, both are designed to make sure you never actually retire, just die on time. So today, let's compare two nations obsessed with discipline and responsibility. Singapore's CPF, the self-congratulatory vault of mandatory savings, versus Japan's national pension system, a polite Ponzi scheme that prays you won't live too long. Singaporeans will tell you, at least CPF makes me rich in the future. But future in CPF means when your back hurts, your hair is gone, and your favorite hobby is checking the HDB resale prices you can't afford to buy again. Meanwhile, in Japan, retirees queue at the ATM every 15th of the month like it's Black Friday. Except they're not shopping, they're just checking if the government still remembers them. And the irony, both systems were born in the same era, post-war industrial optimism, when governments assumed the worker would never die early, never get divorced, and never live long enough to drain the system. That was the 1950s fantasy. But it's now 2025, and people are living till 90, while governments are still calculating like it's 1965. So let's dig into this uncomfortable truth. Singapore's CPF makes you rich on paper, but locks your money like an overprotective Asian parent. Japan's pension gives you freedom, but it's the freedom to be poor with dignity. Both are systems that look efficient on PowerPoint, but feel medieval in real life. Stay till the end, because we'll find out which country's retirees are actually happier. The ones who can't touch their money, or the ones who don't have any left to touch. Let's rewind to the 1950s and 60s, when Singapore was sweating its way out of colonialism and Japan was rebuilding faster than a Starbucks opening in a gentrified district. Both governments looked at the chaos and said, people need security, but let's make them earn it. And thus, the modern pension systems were born. Japan's National Pension Act in 1959, Singapore's CPF in 1955, both forged in the age of black and white television, when the word AI meant artificial insemination, not intelligence. The logic was simple. If citizens save for their own retirement, the government won't be blamed when they grow old and poor. It was a masterpiece of bureaucratic judo, turning public welfare into personal responsibility. In Singapore, the CPF was marketed like a proud invention. Save for your future. But what it really meant was, congratulations, you now pay for your own house, your own healthcare, and your own coffin, with government supervision. Meanwhile, in Japan, the pension system was modelled on Germany's social insurance, except Japan conveniently forgot one thing. Germans actually raise taxes when the math doesn't add up. Japan, on the other hand, just prints brochures explaining ganbatte. It's amazing. Both systems were built on the same utopian assumption, that the average man would work till 60, marry once, buy a home, and retire surrounded by grandchildren and a neatly trimmed bonsai tree. In 2025, that model worker doesn't exist anymore. He's been replaced by gig workers, divorcees, single mothers, and freelancers. People who don't fit the pension template and therefore don't exist on paper. And yet, both governments still talk as if it's 1960. They still preach self-reliance, while quietly watching the cost of living erase every cent people save. So before we blame lazy youth or entitled millennials, remember, these systems were designed for an economy that had only one type of man, a husband, a worker, and a taxpayer, all conveniently the same person. Singapore's CPF is like your mum putting your allowance into a savings account and then charging you interest to withdraw it. It's the most well-behaved form of financial control ever invented. The government says, we're not taking your money, we're protecting it, which sounds noble until you realize your money has more freedom than you do. CPF is brilliant in theory. You save for retirement, healthcare, and housing. 3 noble goals, except that in practice, all 3 compete for the same dollar. Want a home? Withdraw from CPF. Need surgery? Withdraw from CPF. Want to retire? Sorry, you already spent it on the other 2. It's like a financial game of musical chairs, except the chairs are made of bureaucracy and there's always one missing. And then there's the minimum sum, the government's way of saying, you can retire, but only if we think you're responsible enough. Imagine working 40 years only to be told, congratulations, you're finally allowed to withdraw your own money, slowly, in monthly rations. Singaporeans love to say CPF makes them disciplined, but discipline isn't freedom. It's control with better marketing, because the real secret of CPF is psychological. It keeps the population loyal through fear of financial chaos. You can't quit your job recklessly. You can't move overseas easily. You can't even fail safely. And that's the genius of it. The system doesn't need to imprison you. It just makes you too responsible to leave. You see, in Singapore, financial responsibility is a religion, and CPF is the temple where everyone prays to the god of 2.5% interest. But don't get me wrong, it works. People retire with roofs over their heads, and the government gets a stable economy. It's just that everyone's too scared to question why their savings feel like a lifetime mortgage. Next, we'll fly north to Japan, where the pension system is the opposite. No control, no security, and somehow even less money. Japan's national pension system is like a kabuki play. Beautiful costumes, elegant words, and absolutely no connection to reality. It's the nation's favorite performance. Everyone is taken care of. Except no one can remember their pension number, and half the country secretly suspects the system won't exist when they retire. Let's be honest. The Japanese pension system runs on hope, not math. Every worker pays in, believing that one day the next generation will pay for them. But what happens when the next generation never shows up? You get 1.3 children per woman, and a government that keeps saying, we'll fix it soon. They've been saying that since 1989. At this point, soon probably means after the next ice age. The official pension brochure still shows smiling grandparents drinking tea. But reality, they're drinking canned coffee at 6 a.m. convenience store jobs. Retirement in Japan looks more like shift work with arthritis than leisure in Okinawa. And yet, people still believe. Because the Japanese government is masterful at maintaining the illusion of order. They print reassuring charts, host polite press conferences, and announce reforms that sound complex enough to be trusted, but simple enough to be forgotten. One classic reform: raise the retirement age to 65. Brilliant move. The easiest way to save the system is just don't let people retire. Another: increase contributions. Translation: you pay more for the same future that's shrinking faster than your real wages. The saddest part? Japan's pension system isn't just outdated, it's emotionally manipulative. It flatters older voters by pretending the country still values their sacrifice. But it quietly punishes the young for being born late to the party. In the end, Japan's pension isn't a safety net. It's a loyalty test. You keep paying because not paying feels like betrayal. Well, it's not about money anymore. It's about faith. And faith, in Japan, is the only thing that still compounds with interest. Singapore and Japan, 2 perfectionist societies, both allergic to chaos, but expressing it in completely opposite ways. In Singapore, the system works too well. In Japan, the system doesn't work at all. That's the difference between control and collapse. One locks your future behind bureaucracy. The other lets it evaporate politely. Let's start with control. Singapore's CPF is designed like a Swiss watch. Precise, predictable, and impossible to open without tools you're not allowed to own. Every dollar you earn is automatically split, labeled and locked. No black market, no loopholes, no freedom. It's the financial equivalent of the country's chewing gum bag. Efficient, hygienic, and a little bit dystopian. But Singaporeans don't revolt because they're too comfortable to complain. It's a golden cage with Wi-Fi and air conditioning. Now, Japan, the total opposite. The Japanese pension system is like an abandoned vending machine. You still put coins in, but half the time, nothing comes out. There's no enforcement, no transparency, and no plan B. Half of self-employed people don't even pay their pension dues, and the government pretends not to notice, because collecting the truth would cause national panic. That's Japan's version of control. Look calm while everything quietly falls apart. At least in Singapore, the state controls you directly. In Japan, they let you control your own suffering. Here's the paradox. Singapore's system keeps people too alive to rebel. Japan's system keeps people too tired to care. Both produce obedient citizens, just with different emotional flavors. In Singapore, obedience tastes like anxiety about your CPF balance. In Japan, obedience tastes like guilt for burdening society. And so the outcome is identical. Both populations grow old with immaculate manners, tiny savings, and a blind faith that the government knows best. But maybe that's the Asian genius, to call resignation resilience, to call stagnation stability, and to call a financial trap a social contract. Here's the cruel irony. Both Japan and Singapore built their pension systems for a generation that no longer exists. The loyal worker, the obedient taxpayer, the lifelong employee who never questioned authority. But today's young people, they don't get promotions. They get contracts. They don't get pensions. They get side hustles. And they don't get married. Because financial survival is their marriage. Let's start with Singapore. You'd think a country obsessed with meritocracy would reward effort. But CPF treats gig workers like invisible citizens. No employer, no contribution, no retirement. It's capitalism's version of ghosting. Many young Singaporeans look at their CPF statements like reading an obituary in advance. Here lies my future, buried under HDB mortgage. The government calls it self-reliance. But self-reliance means something different when rent costs half your paycheck and your future is locked in a fund you can't access until arthritis sets in. And so they turn to investor or trading, crypto, TikTok side hustles, anything that promises a sense of control over their own timeline. Not because they're greedy, but because they know the system was never built for them. Now Japan, same movie, different subtitles. Young Japanese workers pay into a pension system they don't believe in. Why? Because the alternative is even worse, total abandonment. They watch their grandparents collecting tiny payouts, their parents working part-time in retirement, and their own wages stagnating for 30 years. It's not a generation gap. It's a financial trench. In Japan, the youth no longer chase stability. They chase escape, freelance life, digital nomadism, living abroad, anything to avoid becoming another sugar nai statistic. Both nations suffer from the same illusion, that the young will quietly pay for the old forever, but the math and the mood say otherwise. The new poor aren't the uneducated or lazy. They're the overqualified and underpaid. The ones who realized too late that their future was someone else's retirement plan. So, what's next? Will Japan and Singapore finally face reality, or keep pretending that Excel spreadsheets can outsmart demographics? Spoiler, both are too polite to admit failure. In Singapore, reform means adding more rules to fix the old rules. They'll announce a Silver Support Scheme 2.0 and call it innovation, even though it's just the government paying itself back with your own money. It's like upgrading Windows 98 to Windows 98 Plus. The CPF will probably become even more automated, more digitized, more inclusive. Translation: it'll be harder than ever to touch your own savings. Financial security will look like a blockchain you can't log out of. Meanwhile, Japan's version of reform is pure denial art. They'll hold a press conference, show PowerPoint slides about sustainable society, and then raise the retirement age again, 70, 75, maybe 80, because nothing screams hope like a senior citizen in a factory uniform. The Japanese pension system doesn't evolve, it decays gracefully. It's like an old shrine. Everyone respects it, no one uses it, but it would feel wrong to tear it down. The government still calls it social security. But the only thing secured is silence, the ultimate truth. Neither nation will collapse. They'll just shrink elegantly. People will work longer, spend less, and smile more politely while doing it. A graceful descent wrapped in GDP charts and self-discipline. And maybe that's the real genius of both systems, to convince citizens that endurance is the same thing as prosperity. Because in Asia, survival isn't about reform, it's about performance. And both Japan and Singapore have mastered the art of looking fine on the outside while quietly panicking on the inside. In the world, you're retired, not because the system worked, but because your body finally stopped fighting. And when you open your CPF or pension statement, you'll realize the truth. The numbers don't lie, but they don't comfort either. So here we are, two nations, two pension systems, and one shared illusion that discipline alone can outlive demographics. Singapore's CPF says, save harder, work longer, retire later. Japan's pension whispers, trust us, we'll manage somehow. Both are slogans, not solutions. Both are survival strategies dressed up as social contracts. In the end, neither country failed. They just refused to update their definitions of success. Singapore built a financial fortress so strong that even citizens can't escape it. Japan built a moral myth so deep that even the truth can't reach the surface. And maybe that's the final irony. Singaporeans die with money they can't touch, while Japanese die believing the system still cares. Different forms of comfort, same emotional outcome, obedience. In Asia, responsibility is the last religion that never lost followers. But somewhere along the way, we stopped asking what we were responsible for saving, for sacrificing, or for staying quiet. Look closer. The younger generations aren't lazy. They're rational. They've realized that the real retirement plan isn't a pension. It's escape. Escape from unaffordable cities, from endless self-reliance sermons, from the polite guilt of being born too late to enjoy stability. That's why Singaporeans are buying property in Johor and Japanese youth are disappearing to Bangkok, Bali or YouTube. Because if the system can't evolve, the people will, even if it means leaving. So here's the uncomfortable truth. Neither CPF nor Japan's pension is truly broken. They're perfectly designed for a world that no longer exists. And until governments realize that discipline can't replace dignity, the next generation will keep inheriting the same polite disaster. One paycheck, one deduction, one illusion at a time. But don't worry, as long as you keep working, the system will stay stable for everyone except you.